And it's always a mystery.
Yeah, there it goes. Hello, everybody. I am the artist formerly known as Breadbeard. And joining us today is the beautiful and amazing Mexie and half of a partner.
Oh yeah, you're kind of in the shot.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, I don't care, but
yeah, he cares. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Breadbeard, for having me on the show. And my partner's here also, just kind of off camera, because we're going to be talking a lot about anti-fascist organizing today with an amazing activist. And we're quarantining together. He doesn't, he's just chilling. So he figured he would kind of join. But yeah, we're going to be talking with Nettles, who's an awesome activist. He made a really fantastic zine that everyone should check out. If it's fine with them, I will definitely tweet the zine out. Only if it's fine though. But I thought
I'm sorry. They've already said that they please it's meant to be promoted.
So. Perfect. Okay, well then I'll definitely share that because I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to stop you in there. No. And it is actually in the description. You can find both an online version and a printable version that is staggered, so you can print it out and happen to leave them on your coworker's table or something like that.
Yep.
By the way, the reason I am wearing it's a stupid bit, but the reason I am no longer Breadbeard is because the beard's gone.
No. Dun, dun, dun. It looks nice.
I'm
like a bit of a there's like a bit growing back.
It's a little bit. It's been like 2 days. I did this for a part in my next video. I shaved for the first time in a decade for you folks for this video, and I might not. I'm not going to tell you if I ate the hottest pepper on the planet.
What?
For this video.
For this video?
In the video, as a part of the video. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyways. Before we bring on our guest, the whole purpose for all these, if you've noticed that you've seen a lot of different Antifa activists being brought on for the streams, is because we are trying to support and promote the Antifa International Defense Fund. If you don't know what that is, go look in the description. They are a fund that collects money, pure donations. There's no corporate backers or anything like that, pure single donations to send directly to people who incur fees or injuries doing anti-fascist action. So also if you see this little streaming thing down here, my channel is actually not monetized, so I can't take super chats. However, I can take them through Streamlabs. So if you send a message there, a chat message with a donation, all donations for this stream will go to Antifa International Defense Fund, and we will read out your questions or chats or messages.
Cool.
So yeah. All right. Without further ado, we will bring on Stinging Nettles. Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm a little nervous, but thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
No, we're absolutely thrilled to have you. At least I am.
I'm thrilled.
Welcome, Conrad.
Yeah.
I like your foliage. I think it's very very lush.
It is nice live stream.
Is that a stinging nettle? I'm not actually 100% sure what they look like.
Yeah, it's not super subtle. It's
cool. What is a stinging nettle? Does it have like special properties or something?
It does actually. So it's a plant that can hurt you. It's like got little spines on it, but actually, if you know how to work with it, more. It's got healing properties. And,
cool.
A lot of many of which have like specifically like for
like different medicinal properties or healing properties.
Yeah, different medicinal properties.
That's also a very apropos name. Then that's a very good one actually. I like that. Speaking of which, we were just promoting your zine. Again, anyone who wants to see it is in the description. And actually, I'll show a quick shot of it real quick. Let's go to the top. This is the zine. Tough Mind, Soft Heart. And this is the entire work is amazing, but this is some beautiful artwork, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the artist is No Bonzo, who is
No
an
Bonzo.
amazing artist. You should definitely check them out. They have Instagram and Twitter and everything. I've admired their work for a long time, so I asked them if I could use some of their artwork for the zine, because I thought it would really, take it up a notch, which it definitely obviously did. So I'm really glad that they agreed to let me do that.
Are they the same artist who did the cover of Alexander Reed Ross's book?
They are, yes.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. It's got the roses and the heart and the Antifa action symbol and nurturing solidarity and the struggle against fascism.
I did add the iron front, so that was a small modification I did for this particular piece, but
well, it works.
Yeah.
How do I stop sharing?
It's their iron front though. I took the iron front from a different piece that they did, so it's still their design of an iron front that I just superimposed on a different one. So
I think that's great. But I think the entire zine is absolutely amazing. And so that's kind of one of your big things then. So you have been doing anti-fascist work. We've already agreed, by the way, to the audience knows as well, we're not going to go into specifics of past actions or any of that stuff. But what started to bring about, what made you want to write the zine? What made you see that there was a need to talk about radical compassion and caring for others and yourself in the Antifa action kind of world?
Well, I'm also one of the sort of newer recruits. I'm a Trump era Antifa person. So it's difficult because you're kind of coming into a new world when you sort of start doing this type of action, and there's an existing culture that's a really beautiful, rich culture that Antifa has been creating for decades and decades, and it's a lot of it is like really awesome and really fun, and I've met amazing, wonderful people, and but also some of it was kind of difficult for me, and not just, just because, I don't know, I, as a femme and as a disabled person, everybody in every aspect of society still deals with, sexism and ableism, and it's not like Antifa is like the only place where that can be an issue. Like, that's everywhere. And actually lots of anti-fascists are specifically even more cognizant of those issues, and it's been a really great way to find comrades and find community who are interested in these issues. But also, sort of, when I first got in, there was just a lot to adjust to as far as some of those cultural norms, and some of the, I think it's like, well, you got to sort of figure out where you're at. But then, having done it for, now I've been doing Antifa stuff for about 3 years, and during that time I'm just sort of seeing some of these issues happening. It's like, okay, what parts of this can be, what are people doing that can be more helpful? I just want to say real quick, like, one of the reasons I wrote a zine is because I really enjoy the ability to write and then go edit and like go check my work. So, like, I'm really, it's kind of stressful to be doing a live interview because I'm nervous about saying the wrong thing. So I'm
we all are.
Yeah.
Thanks for bearing with me as I'm kind of like,
well, I don't know if it's a comfort or makes it worse, but it never really goes away. I still feel that all the time. So,
and you know, yeah, some of us have had some pretty bad streams in our day, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no. Yeah. So it's easier said than done, I know, but you don't. There's nothing you really have to worry about. Just
okay.
just talking to us.
Yeah. So basically, every community has problems. Like, there's no community doing anything that doesn't run into issues that are being created and compounded by the external culture. You know, like, we've all got to do work in getting rid of these norms that we've grown up with and the way that we've been socialized. And I just wanted to, when I'm doing the Antifa stuff, it feels like especially like a lot of the richness of the work, of like the way that people do things in a really like feminist and loving and like anti-ableist way, the way that things move keeps getting kind of undermined or lost by an outward aspect that is much more like patriarchal and rough, and some of that is fine, and some of that. Oh, do I sound quiet?
No. There was one or two people saying that, but if you can't change it, that's okay. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I'll try to speak up a little bit.
That's fine.
Anyway, I wrote the zine because there's a lot of stuff going on that doesn't always get the press, you know, that doesn't get all the attention. That sometimes the people that get all the attention are not the people who are grabbing a lot of attention, not representative of all the people doing all the work. You know, so it's just sort of like I just wanted to try and highlight the work being done that is not as visible, and a lot of the times invisibilized work is, you know, feminized work that's not done just by women, it's done by people of all genders, but it's sort of like that really, really important labor that is necessary for any sort of like functioning community, and like any sort of functioning movement. So I just wanted to like try, and I just wanted to like, because what I did is I got all of these, I've been reading all these interviews and like reading all of this work on anti-fascism for so long, and I just wanted to gather all those voices together that have been trying to say all of these things about care work, and often get kind of lost in the mix. So
yeah, for sure. Maybe we should start with maybe going over, for people who haven't seen the zine yet, kind of some of the main ideas in there. I really love all of the stuff about radical compassion, about dehumanization, about not, you know, replicating all of these toxic systems in the spaces that we're trying to build together, in the communities that we're trying to build together. I love that you brought up Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. I always talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I fully agree, because I don't know if you saw these videos, but I made 2 videos on strategies for post-capitalism. And in that, I was kind of addressing similar themes that I was seeing in real life organizing spaces and also in the online sphere. And it was people not really being able to grapple with the fact that, you know, all of these toxic systems exist within us, and we need to decolonize our minds from these systems and do that work in order to show up in a way that, you know, is, first of all, you know, supportive and, you know, works well with our comrades, but also in a way that we're actually going to prefigure the world that we want to see. And we're not going to fall into the trap of then, you know, replicating empire and like patriarchy and toxic shit in our own movements, just because we can't really seem to, I don't know, to get it together, or to even to acknowledge it, right? Or you know, a lot of people are really, they really want to hang on to certain systems like patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and things like that, because it gives them power, and it's kind of like an unconscious thing, but that it's really damaging to the efficacy of on the ground organizing. And I just thought that really came through in the text. So I don't know, maybe we should just start with if you could give maybe a broad overview of some of the key points that you brought forward in the zine, and yeah, like why you think they're important.
One of the things I was trying to do in the zine is try to break out of the sort of binary of absolutes of, you know, on one side you've got like, you know, is basically it's the violence versus nonviolence thing that can sometimes be transferred then into like being rough and like intense and radical versus like loving and soft and compassionate. And my point is that that binary is a false binary, and it's based on like a patriarchal understanding of the world, that like you can't be like, there's just like, you can't be soft and loving and compassionate at the same time as being able to kick someone's teeth in. And like sometimes those are actually the same thing. And which is hard for folks because we really enjoy these binaries a lot of times just because it makes it easier. And like we actually have to be able to embrace gray space and embrace like the fact that the world is more complicated. But one of the things is when you're traumatized, it becomes very hard to do that. Like black and white thinking is a symptom actually of burnout and of trauma. And so you see the whole world sort of in this like really traumatized place because the systems that we're under are just extremely terrible and extremely traumatizing. So everybody has like getting into this, like, it's really easy to fall into that trap of the binary thinking. Like it's one or the other, you know, it's like violence or non-violence. It's like, you hate somebody or you love somebody, you know, it's like you have, you know,
well, it's just like the world is so much easier if it was that way, right? Like it's just if you can say that person's bad, and yeah, exactly.
It's not. And so what I was trying to do is like just trying to analyze for myself. I just, you know, when you're in it, when you're just out there doing the work and you're hitting the streets and everything, everything kind of just moves really fast and can be really traumatic, and you're just going and you're just going and you're just going. But for me, I've had some health problems, and then I was like basically benched, you know. It's like, okay, well, for a number of reasons, and it's like, well, now I have all this time to just sit around and think about it and like really what did just fucking happen. I just you know, it's just like going so hard for so long, and then just like sit back and you stop and you think, you're like, wow, what was like, whoa, what just fucking happened? What was all that? You know, and then so I just started doing some analysis and having time to like kind of try and come to terms with everything that had gone on while I was doing all that work, and trying to figure out why I was acting the way I was acting in some situations, and like why other people were acting the way they were acting. Because what's the most painful thing, I think, is when we fight with each other, and like when we are bad to each other, and like that had happened a number of times just because it's like it's just a lot to deal with. And there are times when I had been really shitty to people, and there have been times when people have been really shitty to me, and these are often people that I respect, you know. And it's like, well, why was I acting like that? And like, why were they acting like that? Like, what's going on to create this situation? And instead of individualizing the problem and being like, well, I'm a shitty person, that's what happened, or like, well, they're shitty people, that's what happened. It's like, no, what's going on structurally within the movement that's like creating these situations, you know? So so I just sort of started doing a lot of reading, and there's a lot of like really good work already out there dealing with some of these like more human issues. A lot of the time in sort of the anti-fascist discourse, it's very kind of ideological. It's very because the people who have the headspace in order to be doing sort of more academic work are often and are often sort of just thinking about analyzing fascists, or just spend a lot of time analyzing fascists. And why are fascists doing things the way they're doing? Like, what's happening with the fascists? And I just wanted to take a step back and be like, well, what's happening with us? Like, what's going on? How are we doing? Like, let's just do a check-in with ourselves. Like, how are we right now? How do I feel right now? You know? And like, some of that is like, well, I don't feel super good. Like, I feel so this project of writing this zine was like, you know, it was a very emotional journey writing this zine, being like, well, and it's trying to like have compassion for myself in the ways that I'd fucked up, and then have compassion for the people that I'd been working with, and like how the ways that they'd fucked up, and like just trying to like figure out how can we make this space better so that we're not damaging each other, you know, while we're doing this work.
For sure.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about this dehumanization in your zine, which what you were just talking about, like this idea that this just clean cut, and I really like. I like the way you kind of rationally take it. I'm kind of hesitant to use that word because it's like emotions aren't valid, you know. But you do take a very like, well, look, like not emotion. You talk about emotions, but you also talk about it like, and this is kind of what I feel is like as an end goal, as like a dialectical understanding of the problem. You know, if you're just saying those people are bad, or just I'm good, or if I do something wrong, then I'm bad, or whatever, then no one kind of ends up winning. You know, no one gets any ground. So I really like the way you kind of you English language is horrible nowadays. Like I want to say common sense, and I don't like the word common sense either.
Well,
yeah, very like rational thought to it.
Yeah, it's okay to think of it rationally, because this is a rational thing. It's not necessarily. I mean, it is a moral argument, but my point is that moral arguments are rational. That like it's what works morally, and like what's the right thing to do actually is functionally better in the world. Like the reason it's not just that you have to do something because it's the right thing to do and like it makes you a good person or whatever. It's like coming from a morally solid grounded space is more efficacious in the world, in your work, you know. So like it's like that. So when I'm talking about dehumanization, that section took me a long time, and because that's a very delicate situation to deal with, because my point is not that like we have to be nice to Nazis. Like that's not what I'm trying to say at all.
Yeah.
My point is that if you dehumanize, if you sort of like stop seeing Nazis as humans, then that actually cuts off avenues for understanding how to stop them.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's like it's also means that there's just, it's sort of like a damaging headspace to be in when you stop seeing people as human. But one of the reasons that happens is because, you know, trying to talk about at the beginning of that and like make it clear that one of the reasons that happens is a self-protective thing. You know, it's a self-protective thing. It's like if you're fighting back against somebody, and in order to fight back against them, you're going to have to hurt them, just like to protect your own emotional well-being. Sometimes what you have to do is just try and not see them as a person, so that you can like, you know, you take self-defense lessons, and you learn how to fight somebody. It's like if you just like sit there when they're coming at you to kill you, you're like, oh well, I don't know, maybe they're an okay person, you know. Like that's not a great that's not a great time to do that. That's, you know, that's not, you know, it's like, but they have kids and lives. It's like, I don't give a fuck at that moment. Like they're trying to come and kill me, you know. Like, so like I don't want to make anyone feel like they're a bad person, or that there's something wrong with them, you know, that if they're like dehumanizing Nazis. Like that's not at all what I'm saying. Like, but what I am saying is that headspace can be, over long periods of time, damaging to you, to yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to be like damaging to our praxis and like damaging to our dialogues about like what we want the future world to look like. Like at the core of our ideology, our ideological grounding still has to be one that believes in human rights for all. You know, one of the, sometimes the anti-fascist discourse in radical spaces has sort of like can sometimes start to undermine sort of our like core values. You know, people start talking about like the death penalty being okay. It's like, well, I do not want the power of life or death being put in the hands of the state.
Yes,
you know, like
absolutely.
that's just like that's a core value that I have, and that doesn't. I want to stay grounded in that when we're dealing with anti-fascism, and like understand that like there's situational dehumanization, then there's ideological long-term, and then when we're like ideologically in a space that's not grounded in like human rights for all, then that can end up changing the way we view everybody, and like changing the way we're dealing with other people, and that like that headspace is really damaging and dangerous if you are especially if you hold power of other types in society, because it's like I think that a lot of times, especially like identity politics will only get you so far, but like especially if you hold a lot of power in society, like if you are a cishet white guy and you are speaking a lot of like violent dehumanizing rhetoric, you do not feel safe to me.
No.
Like, even if it's like directed at Nazis, like I don't know you, and like I don't know, you haven't proven to me that you're a safe person just because you say that you're an anti-fascist. You know, so it's like if I see that you're displaying the ability to dehumanize somebody and like be very violent to them, even if in your mind it's like, well, I'm talking about Nazis, it's like, well, what you're showing me is that you're able to do that in general, and I have no guarantee that you're not going to do that to me.
Yeah.
You know, you have to prove that every time. You know, like every separate person has to prove that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you actually. Oh, you talk first this time.
Yeah, no, I really love that whole section, and how I think it was really nuanced the way that you did talk about it, and it really didn't come across as like, oh, we should we should shame anyone who's like dehumanizing a Nazi or anything like that. But I liked how you talked about, that headspace, and how that's so locked in with just the concept of othering in general, and how this is a tool of empire. Like dehumanizing people is a tool of empire. It's a tool of white supremacy. It's a tool of capital. It's a tool of all of that. And so obviously if, a Nazi is trying to dehumanize you or dehumanize people that you care about, and dehumanize, entire groups of people that you want to be a strong ally to, then, people can be like, oh, well, they're dehumanizing us. So like, they don't have any humanity, like they don't, whatever. And I don't think we should like humanize them, necessarily, but like at the same time, I agree completely that, if we're not conscious of like set and setting, and we let that be a long-term ideology that we hold, then inevitably we're going to turn that in on our comrades. And I see that happening a lot. I see that happening a lot.
Yeah, case in point recently. Yeah.
Like it's just, I think that if people really are not conscious of that and what makes them other, and like what systems of power they're holding onto when they other people in a really violent way, in a way that isn't situational and isn't like, based on something that's like a real threat or something like that that's happening. I think it's something that people don't want to talk about because they want to just be able to like do whatever. But it does lead to people supporting things like, oh, well, if we could put them to death, like I would, like let's have the state do that kind of thing. And I think it takes us really far away from like where we want to be, Well,
it's adopting this. It's one thing to adopt like a tactic of your enemy for use against them, and it's another thing to understand the mindset of your enemy, but then to actually adopt the mindset, like to actually bring that into your own headspace is such a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really worry that we sometimes think that we're immune because we're anti-fascists, that we're immune to the rightward shift in general. And one of the very early on, I was reading about, I was doing my research on how do you fight fascism, like when fascism became the word of the day when Trump got elected. I was like, okay, well, let's look about this. I'm sure other people have done work on this already. And I found the Center for Applied Nonviolence and Action Strategies. It's which grew out of Sergei Pofovic's work in taking down the authoritarian government in Serbia. Did I get that right? Oh God, I'm tired. Sorry, but anyway, and one of the things he says, and he's gone around as an activist, as an anti-authoritarian activist, and like he's problematic in some ways now that I can see. But the point is, at the time, one of the things he says is that authoritarianism leaks into everybody. Like it's like everyone starts moving in this way. And you have to really check in with yourself and like anchor yourself down. And to not to not be affected by it, especially if you're around it all the time. And like I worry about researchers specifically who are like in those spaces, like in fash forums all the time, like getting that coming at you all the time. Like that shit is damaging, like that shit is not good for you, like it's really and it's like
we know about that.
Exactly, just try and stay aware of that dynamic, that's happening to everybody, that we have to we're all on this weird journey, we're all being taken for a ride, and it's like to continuously just stop and like check in with yourself and like check in with your moral state and your values and like reground down into that. And like one of the things I really appreciate about Antifa at the very beginning, and one of the reasons I was like, I think this is the movement that I want to sign on to, is the way that they held the line in that moment of turmoil, like during the election, when they're like, and like through like liberal media and everybody freaking out and like starting to like try and like accept a new reality, that like even if a lot of the liberal talking heads were trying to say like we can't let this be normalized, like a lot of the stuff they were doing rhetorically and in media was in fact working to normalize fascism. And but Antifa held the line and said like, no, we're not gonna compromise on this. Like this shouldn't be something that you have to hold the line on to say fascism is bad, but you do have to continuously hold the line on it. You have to continuously, you just have to, and they're just like, we're not gonna say, we're not gonna throw people fighting against fascists, both physically, who have to fight, who are fighting fascists physically, we're not gonna throw them under the bus and like get into this like liberal rhetoric about why punching Nazis is bad and how punching Nazis makes you a fascist. It's like, no, we're going to hold the line and say like, you have to fight, like we know what's happening, we know what's coming, you have to fight fascists, sometimes physically, and like we're not going to compromise on that at the time when like everybody was freaking out, And so like, I did this scene right now, basically, because it's like, just every once in a while, you got to just go back and check in with yourself. Like, why are we doing this? What are my values? What is what is grounding me in this work? And like, what is grounding me as a human? So it's like,
do you have any thoughts on you speak about it in the book, but just for the listeners right now, the viewers, what are some methods or some thoughts about facing things like burnout or finding yourself kind of straying from the path? What are some things that you think people can do to kind of check in on themselves? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, could I just add to that? Like, especially if they are people who are like going through fash forums and things like that, and who are finding it difficult to not, give in to just holding on to a ton of anger and just really being like, I want to fucking like kill these people,
Yeah. Well, first of all, feel the anger, because that's another part of holding the line. That means that your compassion has been completely deadened. You know, like if you're not feeling angry at all anymore about any of it, I don't know if that's a good sign.
True.
Yeah.
You know, like, that anger is a really important, like, moral check-in, and say, like, yeah, I am still mad about this. Like, this should make you mad. It's also, you know, you can't hold on to anger all the time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't discount it. I The thing is in our society we have a tendency to individualize everything and all issues, you know, and say, like, well, so how do you personally? It's like, well, you know, I personally, it's really important to have, like, you know, a personal set of rituals or uh, things that you do to help ground yourself and make yourself feel better. And those are all going to be very individual. You know, some people, and hopefully at this point in your life, you've figured some out, or if not, you know, maybe you can start working on that, like really try and figure out what makes you feel better. Maybe it's dancing around, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's punching things, maybe it's music, maybe it's, you know, sex or whatever, you know, like trying, you know, figure out like what it is that really helps you feel better, and like pay attention to that, and like pay attention to what doesn't help you feel better, because like it took me a while to figure out that like some things that some people find really helpful like are not fucking helpful for me. Like so it's really an individualized thing for that. But on the other hand, the point of the zine is that we need to have, that we can't do it alone, that it can't be individualized, that like this sort of like care is a communal thing, that we need each other, you know, and like we need to have ways of tying in together, and the only way that we're going to be able to do it is if we have other people, and like that's extremely difficult to do, and we're all kind of like often really isolated. And how do we, like, I don't have all the answers, you know, I'm just saying that like I see a need for folks to like be able to reground, and but in community, like with other people, sometimes you just really can't reground yourself, like you need help.
Yeah.
You know, like I know, and it's okay to need help.
Yeah.
And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really like the you know, the idea of nurturing anti-fascism, and how it's like, going back to this dichotomy between, you know, aggression and being soft or whatever. You know, first of all, when you're dealing with your other, like your comrades, right, it actually takes a lot of strength and courage to, you know, own your mistakes in a really humble way and vulnerably put yourself out there, and, you know, try to commit to doing better and growing and changing and things like that. Like that takes a lot of strength. But yeah, at the same time, you know, people are just like, well, you know, how are you going to fight Nazis if you're so soft or whatever? And it's just like, you have to be able to take aggression and give aggression in those situations, of course. And like, there's no problem with, like, people have no problem with doing that. But then when you're in that community with your comrades, like, it should be a really loving and supporting space where you can, you know, replenish your energy, and, you know, avoid some of those feelings of burnout and of just, you know, feeling angry and kind of like destabilized all the time. Like that should be a space where you do feel really supported and nurtured. And I really, really enjoyed that part of it, especially because you know, anti-fascist work is done by so many different people with so many different ideologies. It's not necessarily, you know, it's like a lot of different people can be against fascism, right? So I guess, what do you think are some ways in which people should like come into the space in order to make it more of that like nurturing space that's supportive for other comrades?
Well, there is one thing that I needed to talk about and like get off my chest, is I've actually personally been having a really hard week, and like trying to reground, and this has been rough for me. One of the things that I do personally that has been really grounding and helpful for me is martial arts. And all the gyms are closed. That's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my home workout just like is not as good as jiu-jitsu, which is not the same.
Yep.
You know, and so you know, how do we? So doing this in the time of pandemic is itself already another extra difficult thing because we're having to like readjust all of the things that we do, and it's just sort of a continuous praxis to like be checking in. But like as far as like how this week has been going, and what we can be doing to make this space better, something that I don't talk about in the zine, and I think maybe I should have, and I think I'm going to add an addendum at the beginning because of what happened, is I put the zine out there, and the first person to contact me about it and like tell me how great it was Anti-fascist Gordon, and I was really excited about it because he has a big following and he does a lot of really good work. And then somebody reached out to me and said, like, actually, he has these abuse allegations from this like Black trans activist, and I looked into it, and I'm feeling pretty destabilized, and like by the fact that the community hasn't come together to deal with this situation in a meaningful way, and put me in a situation where, as a femme, I was then contacted first off by somebody who has a history of predatory behavior, and like I've been already in situations in the past of being put in a situation by the community where I was, you know, put in a situation with somebody else with predatory behavior that has already happened to me. And so like it's like, if we're going to make space, one of the things I talk about is making space for trauma and like making space for difficult conversations. It's like, it's really fucking early in the morning, and like I don't even know if I really want to do this right now, but like when else are we going to do this? Like when are we doing this? When are we having these conversations about this shit? Like people ask, why aren't there more women in the movement? Well, this shit is why. The fact that like this shit is why, you know, because it's really hard, because like because throughout all of society, like femmes and women and just vulnerable people in general get preyed on, and it's really hard and scary to be part of a community that isn't taking those issues seriously, and it's making me feel unsafe, and it's like and it's also doesn't do him any fucking favors. That's one of my points, is it's like, how, if we're gonna have compassion for people, if you're gonna like approach these issues with compassion and like see people as human, it's like, how does it do Anti-fascist Gordon any fucking favors to not take this seriously? You know, it doesn't do anyone any good, because obviously like if you read the allegations and stuff, it's like, and you know, and you have this framework of understanding that doing anti-fascist work can be destabilizing, can be difficult, can fuck with your head. And like, we know that there can be times when people become more radicalized in other spaces. You know, it's a documented phenomenon when usually, almost always, it's a man who is showing like misogynistic tendencies early on in leftist spaces, and then like years later become the fascist, and everyone's like, how could this have happened? They were such a leftist. It's like, well, because as a community, we're saying we're not addressing misogyny in like a really way, and we're not like understanding how fucking core patriarchy and misogyny is to fascist ideologies. We're not taking that seriously. It's like, if you're gonna like say that like that's a key part of what it means to be fascist, then anti-patriarchy work, anti-misogyny work, anti-abuse work has to be a key part of what it means to be anti-fascist.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so like it's not, I don't want to see Anti-fascist Gordon becoming a fascist in 5 years, because right now nobody was going to take a stand and say like, this is a fucking problem. Not to mention that we lost a really good activist. I think probably if you go and look at the person that he victimized, you go and like look through their Twitter and everything, like they're obviously very interesting, intelligent person with a lot of insight, and like that's who we need. Like, so as a community, we decided that him and his behavior is more important than what that person could have brought to the table. You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah, I have a lot of
problems. It
problems.
doesn't do him any favors. It doesn't do anti-fascism as a whole any favors. It makes him look bad. It like the rest, you know, he was just posting on Twitter yesterday, like, it's really important to have transparency and like do the right thing and like change your mind if you don't have the right evidence. It's like, well, you fucking fast jacketed somebody with no evidence, and I don't believe a single fucking thing you're saying ever since. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's poisoned the well.
And he's part of a team, right? And so like his shittiness is going to bring down his entire team. It doesn't do, you know, and like that's what this is why I sort of wrote this scene, is to be like, you see, this is a perfect example, is like at the front getting all the credit and like all the admiration and like all of the attention is this one guy with these like shitty behaviors. And his work is bringing down tons of hidden work. All the other researchers working with him, all of the people who have vouched for him, it's bringing down the like anti-fascism as a whole. When like, and like, because it's like maybe the people who are visible about it are seeming to be okay with it, but you know what, like, what about the Black community, what about like the victims community and the Black community and trans men community who see this and they're like, oh, anti-fascists are a bunch of like fucking egotistical abusive white assholes.
No, it's so damaging.
It's so frustrating because no, we're fucking not. No, we're not. There are people like that, but there are people like that, and we're not doing the work to like get them out of our spaces or like hold them accountable. You know, it's not even that Anti-Fascist Gordon has to stop being an anti-fascist or like fuck off into the sun, but like there's obviously something going fucking wrong with him, and it's not a compassionate thing to let him keep going down this path. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm like really, really glad that you brought this up, and I'm so sorry that that's been happening and you've been feeling so destabilized all week and whatever. It's like, it's so damaging. But I'm really glad that you brought up this idea of we don't take misogyny and patriarchy seriously enough in a lot of these spaces, because I mean, it's come out, you know, time and time again that what the major gateway into far right spaces, into fascism and things like that, is misogyny, you know, and you'd think it would be racism, and it's obviously racism too, right? But a lot of it is misogyny, right? That gets you into that space. And I think that makes sense because, you know, patriarchy and toxic masculinity, like toxic, like that is all, wrapped up in this kind of othering, in this kind of dehumanization of the other, one-upping the other, showmanship, you know, grandstanding, all this stuff. And you know, abusing, like using the privilege that you have and abusing that in the space, right? And I see so many leftists, even, you know, quote unquote woke leftists, like really well-meaning leftists, male leftists, really not wanting to grapple with patriarchy, or really not wanting to take a look at how their behavior is modeling and replicating patriarchy or misogyny or toxic masculinity in the space, because it gives them power, right? They actually, you know, like they get power, they have privilege because of that. But I think that you're right. I mean, it's not only is it bringing down so many people who are doing amazing work, but, you know, are going to get, you know, shit on and abused, you know, like in Toronto, there have been many groups that have been just torn apart by abuse, just flat out abuse. And then people not actually being able to come to the table and go through any kind of accountability processes or anything like that, because it's like impossible to call them in, you know? And I think that on the left, we're doing a real disservice to our whole movement by letting this stuff slide and being like, oh, well, whatever, you know, they're really visible, they're doing good work. It's like, you can do good work, but we like, yeah, if you're an anti-fascist, if your goal is total liberation, then you need to make sure that when you're acting in the space, you are checking your own privilege and you are not using that position to, or like the power dynamics at play to inappropriately exploit or abuse or put down other people who are more marginalized. Like, it's just, I don't know how people are like, we seem to be totally okay with that happening, you know, and it's really
Yeah, and again, it's a devil's deal, because we don't want to just take down patriarchy for women and femmes. Like, patriarchy is killing men.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's patriarchy is extremely damaging for men, and like one of the reasons I wrote this is that there are a lot of men grappling with these issues, and it's painful. It's painful to see how fucked up the system, what the system has done to our men. You know, like
Yeah.
it's really, it's hard to watch, and I just want people to know, to put this out there in the anti-fascist sphere and be like, it's okay to need help, guys. Right? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay
Absolutely.
to like it's okay to be soft. And not only is it okay, but like it's really fucking necessary, because this sort of toxicity is hurting the people around you. It's hurting yourself. It's hurting the movement. Like, it's not doing any good for anybody. And you can be a defender, and like you can be a strong person and not be a toxic person. And it's a very difficult balance. And it's something that I've really struggled with, you know, because like I, in the past, like I've had, you know, I was drawn to anti-fascism because of some of my own fucking toxic shit, you know, and like some of my own like needing to deal with that. And like one of the it's like it's this like interesting cross-cultural place where people are drawn to this particular thing in some senses because of some of the toxic stuff, because of some of the like, you know, it's like can be like a cross-recruiting kind of thing in some ways. So it's like, well, if we're doing that, then it needs to be like a really clear praxis that we're also like teaching people how to heal from all of that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And so for me, it was really important to find this space and like find this cultural space where I could do some of that work. But also, like, at the beginning, I was fucking kind of a toxic shithead, and you know, it was like just like, you know, straight up, I was kind of a fucking toxic shithead, and it took like years of like martial arts and therapy and like finding some meaning in my life, and like being around other people that are dealing with the same kind of stuff, you know, and like and so it's an important community, but it's also like, how intentional are we being about understanding those dynamics?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think we're being intentional enough. That's for sure.
As a matter of fact, as speaking of like intentionality, I would say, and I'm kind of as a white cis man, trying to, whatever power I have, whatever privilege I can, you know, use for this message, is everyone, but especially the people with as much privilege as I have, and those have more. Even if you're an ally, we have to not only say that we agree or we're cool with people or we want this thing, we have a responsibility to look for it in our spaces and look for it in ourselves, not just to make you a better leftist or a better anti-fascist activist, but to help the whole community. Like, it's not just to make it better for you. It's, you have that responsibility. You signed up for that when you decided to join this community, that you wanted to help out the other people in the community. And that's how you do that. You know, if you find yourself, and every single one of us is imperfect and still is trying to get rid of some of this toxic shittiness. You know, I'm a vast recovering toxic shithead myself. And you have a responsibility to look for it. You might not even you might think, oh, like, well, nah, that was an old time ago and I'm better now, or no, I'm totally equal to everyone. It's like, that's the same as saying, you know, I don't see color. Like, yes, you do. Yes, you have problems to work on, and you might even notice them. I used to, not long ago, I remember I would say, like, in if a female friend posted something on Facebook, and I would be like, I'd say like you look fucking hot or something, and I meant it. I meant it as kind of like a you go girl. I didn't mean it like I was trying to be, but I didn't think it was still my responsibility. I'm using this as a self-crit. It was still my responsibility to realize, no matter what my intentions are, my thoughts were, like they have to deal with this shit on a daily basis, and I should have known better, no matter what my intentions were. And every one of you and every one of us has to deal with that, and has to confront it, and it's our job. It's not just something we would like to do.
Yeah. I would also offer that, in doing that, you can have compassion for yourself as well. Like you can say, well, I did this at this time because I was suffering this trauma and I was in this place emotionally, and I acted in this way for these reasons that I can now see, because I wasn't in a good emotional place. I wasn't in like a higher place of emotional maturity. So you can have compassion for yourself. And I think you should. But there's a difference between having compassion for yourself and just kind of trying to deny or dismiss or make excuses and be like, oh, I didn't really do that, or I didn't mean that, or that wasn't so bad, or that wasn't this, or that wasn't that. And I didn't do, I don't care. I'm not going to I'm not going to bother trying to analyze this. I'm not going to bother using that to learn and grow and to make sure I don't perpetuate that harm in the future. Like that's a very different thing. And to me, I think that is fragility,
It is, it's ego. And that's one of the, it's sort of ego gets in the way of so much stuff. And it can, we have an ego for a reason. It's a protective thing, right?
Yeah.
Which sometimes you need that, but also the fragility, sort of male fragility, also white fragility.
Yes.
There's a lot of white fragility going on, and increasing our resilience in general, especially, it's increasing the emotional resilience of anti-fascists in spaces will mean that we will be able to be open to criticism without being shitty white people about it.
Yeah.
It's like you have, I think that's, that the fragility is a really being able to take criticism and hear it is really hard.
Yeah.
It's also extraordinarily important. It's the only way that we'll ever get anything done.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So learning how to check your own ego and learning how to just feel it and then get over it. A really important skill. And we can't be doing this defensive nonsense all the time, and this inability to say that we're sorry, this inability to be accountable to our communities and accountable to each other.
But
everybody,
you're opening yourself up for abuse, though.
Well, it's well, that's the thing. It's and then drawing boundaries between abuse and criticism.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do need to take criticism. You don't need to take abuse.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So
I don't see how that's so hard to figure out the difference.
Do you or actually I guess this can go for Mexie as well. So you talk about in the zine about moving at the speed of trust. And I love that phrase.
That's Adrienne Marie Brown, I think.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Adrienne Marie Brown.
Oh, Adrienne Marie Brown, yeah. So if you have any thoughts on how what you can do to vet someone, that's good. But even more to my question here is what can people who want to get into these spaces, who have not earned the trust, what can they do to not prove themselves, but what can they do to be the kind of comrade they need to be to get into that trusted space, to do it the right way?
Well, you're not entitled to anybody's trust, and you're not entitled to be in anybody's space. And one of the organizing models of sort of the anarchist left, and in general, is the idea of affinity groups, and sort of organizing parallel with people, not necessarily with people. So it's you may not be able to get into existing anti-fascist spaces, but you can create new spaces, and the people that you already know, the people that you already trust, and like it's if we're gonna expand the movement, then like that's what needs to happen. But also saying that, it's also really difficult because this is really dangerous, difficult work, and there's a lot of like needed skills sets and like needed community supports that are needed in order to like feel safe and able to do the work. And I don't have good answers for that, because like that's a really rough, that's like a tough question right now, kind of, actually, is like, how do you start? But like people have managed to, and different groups have different kind of like ideas about this, and like different ways that they go about
like
doing
vetting
that.
people.
I would, yeah, like vetting people and stuff like that, really like a very, very widely varied. If you're interested in anti-fascism and you want to join up, all I can say is like, be brave and know that if you get into trouble, if shit hits the fan, people will be there for you. That's what sort of happened to me, is that's what I'm forever indebted to Antifa International, because like when shit hit the fan, and like, and then you're fighting with other people, and like you're having a hard time and whatever, it's like, but they were there for me. Like there are community supports, and the community supports that we have need to be supported more so that like they can be there for people. And we need to like build more community supports, and just like think about what you're good at, like we need so many people doing so many different kinds of things, and like there's so many gaps. So like just like look around and see like what kind of work needs to be done, and like what are you good at, and like what do you enjoy, and like how can that tie in, and be brave. It's hard.
Well,
yeah.
You asked a question. I just lost my train of thought.
I was just going to offer, yeah, I agree with all of that completely. And then in terms of like within spaces, in order to like show that you're someone who is safe, I would say humility is key, like having humility and sensitivity to, the people that you're talking to, and sensitivity to the power dynamics of like the interactions that you're having. Like if you are a cis white dude and you're talking to like a more marginalized person, then be aware of those, power dynamics. And then as well, kind of demonstrate that you are open, like you are not going to be fragile, like you will be able to be called in, and you'll have the ability to handle that in like a really, emotionally, I guess, mature way. And perhaps even, demonstrate that you're willing to show some changed behavior and things like that. I think that is kind of just like, step by step, how to not be a shitty person in the space with other people.
It's good advice about not being shitty in general.
Yeah, like when it comes to org, people think like I'm from the outside, what seems like it's wanted is not necessarily like the best stuff, actually, necessarily. It's like it's more important for you to be able to like work well with people than it is for you to be able to like punch somebody in the face.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes it feels like if that's the only skill you have is punching somebody in the face, well, there's space for that too. But also, like, what do we need to do to like be able to what internal work needs to be done to be able to work with folks? Like what communities can you bring into this? Like who's in your community already that you're ignoring? It's like when we like, I would say like try and like expand your idea of community. Because a lot of times I think you get stuck in being like, well, if you want to be an anti-fascist, you need to be Antifa, like TM, and like in the space, and like in those, that those are your people. And like one thing that was hard for me for a long time is like I really wanted to be like Antifa TM and like be working with like the people that like had the name and like had the celebrity and whatever, because like that was what was visible and that was what seemed accessible to me, and like you want to like be in the in crowd. But like there is so much work that can be done, and like some of the very best work can be done like just totally outside of those spaces. Just like not like the anti-fascist community, the Antifa community is so much bigger and like so much more diverse than what is like sort of like the image of like just like
Yeah,
the
I
sort of like punk rock skinhead thing, which is totally wonderful and totally valid, but also not the only thing.
actually that was going to be my my next question was, so yeah, everyone, like the general public, even outside of leftist spheres, is that, there's this, everyone knows about like the front facing kind of not direct action, but like violent action, self-defense action. That's what everyone hears about. That's what everyone thinks of when they hear Antifa. Could you, just for anyone out there who may have never even known that there's more to it, could you talk a little bit about some of the other types of like mutual aid or actions that Antifa members often do?
Well, I mean, first off, I just want to say that like it's okay to only do one thing. So like, if you find the thing that you like doing and you're good at it, and like it's a helpful, good thing, like you can just do the one thing. So like I get a little bit bothered sometimes by the discourse that like if you're fighting fascists, you need to also be like doing all this other work in order to like make that a valid thing. Like it happens to be true that lots of anti-fascists are also helping feed and clothe the unhoused, and like are opening up squats, and are I think making hand sanitizer is like a really visible one recently, and like doing all that kind of mutual aid work, and that stuff is so valid and like so needed. And lots of anti-fascists are doing that kind of work because that's what's needed at the time. So you'll see like during the hurricane relief, like, a bunch of Antifa jumped in to help with hurricane relief stuff a few years ago. Like there was an article about that, or like people jump in to do, but like Antifa are generally just people that care about their communities and like have a lot of varied skills and do that stuff. But it's also totally valid for like anti-fascism to be the caring thing that you're doing for your community. Like it's hard to do, like it's emotionally can be really taxing and difficult to be doing sort of like keeping up with the fascists thing, figuring out what's going on with them, and like research and all that stuff is like not easy work and is valuable on its own without being like, yeah, but we are also like do this societally, like this, like society says that I'm a good person if I help the homeless, so I'm gonna also do that. It's like, telling people that there's a dangerous fucking person in their workplace, that's community care. That's being like, we're giving you the tools that you need to like make sure that you're safe, and like that's a caring thing to do. So I just want to validate anti-fascists who are not out there doing mutual aid right now, because there's like, it's we can't do everything. Like I personally
research alone is like a full-time job.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and like I also like I have been doing some mutual aid stuff, and it's been really filling, and like it's good. I think it's good to know that there's other avenues of ways to help, because like I said, like some of this anti-fascist stuff is really fucking hard and like hard on you. So like to be able to take breaks to go and like, if you're like feeling really burned out and stuff, can be really a helpful, fulfilling thing to like refill yourself and refill your battery by going and helping people in other ways. It's really like a cleansing thing to like just like hit the streets and like give people food, like that can just like fill your cup in a way that sometimes you get lost if you're getting disconnected in like internet fascist world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like getting regrounded. So it's like, I think having that as part of the practice is like part of a whole, like being like a whole person, like being like grounded whole person, and like being part like with your community is like a really important thing to do, and lots of people are doing that.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify for anyone, just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. I guess I should have said it a little better, but my question was not meant to the front facing or self-defense action is 100% valid and a good thing. My question was not meant to say that that's wrong and look at this good stuff they do. My question was meant to just expand that there is so much more than just the one thing that's very very public or very visible.
Well, I think it's important to validate that too, because like for me, the frontline stuff is like kind of my favorite thing. I really like being out there.
Mhm.
I've always been drawn to that, and but it's also, high stakes and high risk, and we can't do that all the time. So if like that's the only thing you do, then it can be hard. So it's good to like just have more, to know that there's like more other ways that you can help in the community, and
Mhm.
people, and as far as I can see, that's just sort of like the normal thing that anti-fascists do. Is like, okay, well, oh, there's a fascist rally, we'll go do that. It's like, oh, well, there's not a fascist rally, okay, we'll do research. Or like, okay, well, I'll keep working on doing graphics and like art,
Yeah.
or like whatever.
Yeah, and like even with the frontline stuff, like that stuff doesn't like go off without people working behind the scenes on like logistics, security, food prep, like making sure everyone has water, making sure, there's, I don't know, yeah, like people have legal representation, people, they're just making sure that all of this goes down. So there's a lot of different, like, it's not just people who are fully masked up and on the front lines or whatever. Like even at those actions, there's a lot of people there who are doing support work. There's a lot of people there who are just, families, like, people of all ages, all different stripes and everything, and children there, like for support. Maybe they're not on the front lines or whatever, but there's a lot of things you can do if you're not necessarily wanting to do that,
Well, and it's also an anti-ableist practice too, because like for me, I'm actually probably retired from frontline stuff, which is like makes me really sad. But also, just to like make sure that when that there's more to do. So if you don't like feel like a useless person. If you can't go out and do the frontline stuff, like you can still, there's still lots of like really important work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody watching who's been thinking about getting more active, right now, be careful with pandemics. Yeah, I think like if you're disabled in any way and you're like, oh well, I can't risk that, or I don't physically can't go do that. There's so many other ways you can help, so don't let that dissuade you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Star, sorry, I'll say this quick. That's okay. Star, who actually we interviewed on the Slowdown about 2 months ago, they were hit in the Charlottesville by the truck, and both of their legs and their spine was broken.
Wow.
And so they're, even though they can walk now, they're never going to be able to do that kind of action again, but they are still active even today. They're still doing stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So if they can do it, you can do it. if you're looking to do it, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I was just going to mention, given the pandemic right now, I think a lot of people are feeling kind of like the wind's like been taken out of their sails. So I guess, how do you see anti-fascist organizing proceeding in these times right now where we can't actually go out on the streets?
For me, the framework of anti-fascism as something that's like empowering. If you look at how mutual aid works, that it's mutual aid because it's continuously empowering people, empowering new people, empowering people that are disempowered, right? And so, like if you look at anti-fascism from that framework, like there's lots of like stuff you can do that needs to be done. Anti-fascism for a long time was sort of on the edges, like a very marginal, sort of like small niche thing. Can you still not hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, some people in the chat are saying it's pretty quiet.
I just kind of speak quietly.
If anything else, the simplest way I found is literally just hold the mic closer. That might help.
Just here. Is that better?
That's a lot
okay,
better, yeah.
I'll do that. Oh shoot, I should have done that like an hour ago.
No problem.
I'm not used to. Okay, well, we'll figuring this
out. It actually sounds okay to me anyways, but some people in the chat were saying
okay. So. But anyways, I was saying that anti-fascism used to be kind of a fringe, like niche thing, and it's not anymore, unfortunately. And it always should have been getting more attention than it was. It always should have been like it's like the existence of fascists at all means something has failed miserably in society.
Capitalism.
So like
Yeah.
like every Nazi is just like an outgrowth of like massive structural failure. So like but at this point we're seeing that on like a widespread scale, and the pandemic is only making things worse, which means making fascism worse, which is making fascists around more. And it's just like more obviously, it was always everybody's problem, but it's more obviously right now everybody's problem, you know. And so like there's a lot of people out there that don't have any clue what the fuck is going on and are super confused and like need more resources to deal with this. And like this is actually a really great time for anti-fascism to expand into new avenues. I think education is really key right now, and so educating yourself and then helping educate your community, because again it's like we don't want this to be like a small club of people. We need everybody to understand fascism, to be actively anti-fascist, to like be aware of like the symbols and the people and the ideologies, so that you can see it happening when it's happening all around you. So like empowering, there's so much we need to do right now to like empower everybody, to empower media and empower schools and empower teachers and empower and like tell, you know, like our neighborhoods and like everybody around us what the signs of fascism are, because they're cropping up all over the place, you know. And so it's like, and for us to be able to be accessible and accountable to folks, so that people can approach us with problems, be like, you know, it's like, oh, there's existing anti-fascist community, and if they look at it and it's like, oh, it's like toxic assholes, like I don't want to deal with that. Or it's like, you know, like right now there is a Nazi, it's problematic sometimes to use Nazi as like a catch-all for everybody, because like it's a very specific ideology. But there's a white nationalist working in an ER in Portland, Oregon right now, like in the middle of a pandemic. And it's like, so it's like that whole hospital needs to understand what white nationalism is, needs to understand why she's dangerous. Like everybody who goes to that hospital has a right to know that she's in there doing, like that she's working in an ER. Like the community, like people, like she's actively putting people in danger in the middle of a pandemic right now. And like it's almost like a failure of anti-fascism in some ways that she's still in there. It's also just like, without anti-fascists, we may not even know that she was there. You know what I mean? And she would still be doing that damage if anti-fascists hadn't been doing the research to find her. And like, so
that is great.
So like that's just like one. That's just like one example where it's like there's a whole lot of work just around that can be done. And like there's a Nazi in your neighborhood. Do people know about him? You know, like are you up to date? Are you up to date in all the ways that this shit is like changing really quickly? Like, you know, so it's like,
absolutely.
Do your neighbors know? Like, do you? So there's just like lots of work to do to like make sure that everybody's empowered to deal with this shit.
I only recently like started learning more of their like symbols and things like that, and it's like fucking scary. Like you go drive out, even not very far out from Toronto, even in Toronto, like you'll see these symbols, like people wearing them around their cars or things like that, and you're just like, holy fuck, you know. So I guess for people who might be new to this, because I feel like, you know, there's so much research to be done right now and all of that. But if you're kind of just getting into it on your own, maybe you don't really know where to start. I guess, you know, I don't know if you have any tips for people to go about like contacting or finding kind of organizations or work that's already being done in their own local area, because sometimes that can be really overwhelming.
It can be really overwhelming, and anti-fascists are extremely intimidating, and a lot of times it's you know, once you get to know a lot of anti-fascists, they're actually like generally real sweet people. But we are also willing to use violence, and like that's kind of a scary thing. So I think a lot of times, like, when you know other activists are like in a little bubble, it's like, well, we're nice. I don't know what the problem is. It's like I don't think people lose perspective of like just how scary it is to approach Antifa.
Mhm.
And it's like, if you're not a Nazi, you should not be scared of us. That's,
Mhm.
you know, like,
Yeah.
but like but anyway.
Yeah, the Antifa are the people trying to protect people. They're not the ones you should have to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Unless you're a fascist.
Like, but that's one of the reasons they're at the scene, because like, well, we're not doing that internal work, and we're like not making sure that we're okay, and like, we can't guarantee, I can't guarantee that. We have to like really be accountable and like making sure it's like it's clear that we're working on this shit,
Mhm. Mhm.
because so so I unfortunately, like, that's one of the tough things, is like I'm not really sure, and like every Antifa is different,
Yeah.
so it's like a really local question.
Yeah. I think like maybe in general, just kind of going out to more like rallies and things like that, you'll kind of just meet people and encounter people. And sometimes when you're out at rallies, you'll get flyers for other things that are coming up. So you'll get like, oh, I'm out at this environmental rally or whatever, or this anti-imperialist rally, and then people will come around and like slip you a flyer of like, oh, there's going to be this like fascist thing going on soon, and there's going to be a counter protest, so come out if you can, and then you kind of go from there. Because otherwise I think I don't know how else you would really do it.
I've handed out hundreds of flyers in my life.
Yeah.
What's that?
What?
He said he handed out hundreds of flowers.
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 Also flowers.
You hand out flowers would be good too, actually.
Anti-fascist flowers.
I think honestly the best thing you can do is just like be useful somehow. Like just do some good work, and then it'll be like, oh, this person's doing good work. Who are you? It's like, so whatever your skills are, like whatever you have to bring to the table, like if you have educated yourself, if you're not just like spewing bullshit, it's like if you actually like know some shit about fascism and about the strains of fascism, and are like are kind of caught up on what's going on, like there's anti-fascist Twitter, like you can kind of like see what's going on and like catch up on like the local news, and like check on your local Antifa and just like read their articles, and like educate yourself on what's going on locally, and you'll probably find a place that needs some more support, like find some like there might be a campaign. One of the a lot of people that sort of Antifa doing the research often need a lot of help, like that can be really isolating and really like separate work because it is so anonymized. It's like then there needs to be another group of people, or like another community member who's like not necessarily labeled Antifa, who like can take up the reins of like creating a community response to those issues, like these calling campaigns, and like all of these things, like all of those need more support. There's like Antifa doing the research and like, oh look, here's a bunch of Nazis, but then it's like, okay, then the community really needs to step up and like take on that work to like get that, to take care of that situation, like or like be supported in taking care of that situation. Like what do people need? One of the frustrations that I've heard sort of is like Antifa dropping in and being like, hey, there's a Nazi there, cool, good luck. And then like these like black people are like, okay, thanks, what the fuck, now what? Like so it's like, how are we also like how are we like supporting the next step of like dealing with this fucking problem? So sometimes that work is best done by people who aren't self-identified anti-fascist. Like that's the work that it's better, it's safer to do that work if you're not a self-identified anti-fascist, because then you're less of a target. So like that is
and because I try to ask that question about how can people get started with every activist I've interviewed or talked to, and quite a few of them have told me that they started by just starting. Just join any org or mutual aid network. In the chat, I just dropped my favorite link I think in the world lately is It's Going Down link that has different mutual aid networks by state. It's just massive list. But just getting active and joining us is your foot in the door. And even if it wasn't your foot in the door, you're doing mutual aid, you're helping people.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the point. But yeah, then you start to meet people who do some other types of organizations, like you were saying, and you know, you start to find what fits for you the best.
Yeah, I was going to mention It's Going Down as a good resource to find out what's going on near you.
That's how I got started too. Is I joined one of those Trotskyist organizations. I'm not even a Trotskyist. I just joined one because they were like, I thought it was one of the only things going on. And then I just started meeting one of the ones that's like often made fun of for being a glorified reading group, except they didn't have as much reading. But and then I just started meeting people and going to actions and then meeting more people and making connections. And that's how I got into it too. So yeah. Like even if you only have DSA in your region, I know they're like, you know, not thought of as particularly revolutionary, but like if that's the only thing going on there, you should join probably.
It's
and then
start,
exactly. And then you'll inevitably meet people who are more revolutionary, and you'll form a cadre within that organization, and then you can decide where you want to go from there.
And like fascists are everybody's problem. Like more have been again, but they definitely are right now. So if you're interested in sort of local fascist activity and you're researching that, and just by like what the local Antifa are already doing, all stuff, you can bring that knowledge to like whatever your current community is, and that will be a useful thing. That's needed. Like everybody's under threat right now. Like so are you making sure that how are we making sure that the communities that are the most under the threat have this information? You know what I mean? So it's like
and just if we can switch gears for just a quick second, because this is about raising funds for the Antifa International Defense Fund. By the way, just again, anyone who's joining us that wasn't at the beginning, this stream is for the Antifa International Defense Fund, which does a lot of work with single user donations, pulling them together and sending them to aid people who've incurred fees or injuries doing direct anti-fascist action. There's links in the description to donate. If you want to send a super chat, at the bottom says streamlabs.com/Southwest Social Club. All donations for this stream will go to the Defense Fund. So sorry, now the promo's out of the way. Without getting into any of the specific details, because I know we're not going to worry about those. Can you talk about what you're actually a recipient of aid from the Defense Fund, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell not about the event that caused it, but can you tell what did the Defense Fund do for you?
Well, through my anti-fascist action, I incurred a bunch of fees and monetary problems, and, emotional problems, and I contacted them, and they looked over. You know, they got confirmation that what I was saying had actually happened, and they were able to get me some funding. They helped give me a little cash, and they also just provided a feeling of community support at a moment that was really, really tough for me. Like some of those things can be like really life-changing and like really difficult, and it's just incalculably helpful to know that there are people that have your back, you know. And it's like all of those dollars came from like a huge group of people that like didn't even know me, that had never heard of me before, and like were there supporting me. And it's just such an amazing feeling. And like the next few months after that were really hard for me, but like having had that support and knowing that even if I at that moment was like feeling really alone and disconnected and isolated for various reasons, that there were people that supported me and had my back. And they also like just like wished me happy birthday, and it was like really adorable.
That's
I know.
nice.
it was real. They're just sweethearts. They told me to just hang in there, and that those kind of like community support networks, and that was open. And like I didn't really, I wasn't really even that tied in at the time, but it's like they saw that I had done the work and needed some help, and that was enough. And so yeah, we really need to support the we don't have enough of this kind of community care stuff, and like Antifa International is doing a really important piece of that. So
yeah, that's one thing we struggle with as leftists in general, is like we don't have the resources, right? Like we're not being bankrolled by DeVos or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, exactly. So like it's really important, really important to
you didn't
support.
get your Soros check?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
I have not gotten a single Soros check.
Yeah. So that's so important, like to mobilize the resources that we do have.
And for everyone out there, you just heard Nettles talk about what an amazing thing, and all those people that helped them. You could be one of those people. You can help out. You can be just supporting someone who directly needs it. This isn't paying for some like CEO, to keep on the board or something like that. This is going directly to people who need it. And the way their system is set up, if you donate just $20, one single donation, reoccurring donations are better, but if you donate just $20, you can be on their decisions committee. So all of the requests that come in, they send it out. It's very flat hierarchy. They send it out to the entire decisions crew. They vote on if this person meets requirements for aid, like turning like a camera. They will send a vote. I think it usually lasts 3 days. So you get to be an active member. It's not just a passive. If you want to just donate and have nothing to do with it, you can, but you can be an active part of the community and the group and helping other people and deciding where that money goes. So, and I did it, and I'm so happy I did. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, this zine wouldn't exist if I had that support in that tough moment. It's years later, I was able to create this zine. But like, if I had the support right then, in the crisis moment when I needed it, this couldn't have happened.
Awesome.
Well, Nettles, I know you said you probably had a little under an hour for us. We've actually gone an hour and a half, so you're awesome.
I guess I do get chatty.
No, I'm absolutely happy. I won't speak for Mexie, but
I'm also happy.
Yeah,
so happy.
Everyone is happy. No, I just didn't want to draw you out too long. I didn't want, I know you said you only had probably less than an hour, but I'm very happy you've been able to stay with us for so long.
Yeah, me too.
I guess my final question I have is who's the boss? Who's the general? You finally let's break the secret. Who is Mr. Antifa?
Miss.
Miss.
Yeah. They're mix Antifa.
Mix
yeah.
Antifa.
Elon, right?
Oh, God.
Elon. It was all wrong.
Yeah, I don't know who the CEO is, but honestly, I could have some words with them.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So everybody go down to your local Antifa recruitment office, sign out the official paperwork, get into the ranks.
Yeah.
Nettles, do you have social media of any kind, or just
Yeah, I hate social media, but I did just get a for the sake of this zine, I did start a social media account at on Twitter, so at Sting_NETT, but I don't post anything, so it's not super exciting. But I'll post this video, I guess.
Cool.
So.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, it was so great meeting you. This is really, really a great chat, and thank you. I'm going to publicize that zine everywhere because it was awesome. So I hope everyone reads it and really, really thinks about this, all of this stuff, and grounding themselves in this stuff when they're out and doing this work.
And thank you for helping zine culture alive too.
Oh yeah, it's a good medium. I like zines.
Yeah, I love zines.
if you actually want to talk to me or get a hold of me, it's better to email me, stingingnettles@riseup.net.
Cool.
So.
Okay. And I talked to American Johnson. He's also going to put the zine for free download in his store, the non-compete store. That's non-compete.com/shop, I think.
Cool.
But yes, it'll also be available there for anyone. Or the easiest way, if you're right here, is just go down there, and it's in the description, and you can download it. You can print it. You can put it all around your safely germ-free, accessible places around town. And yeah, spread the word. I think it does a lot to. Again, not that there's anything wrong with the public image of the self-defense, but it helps to broaden the idea of what Antifa action is and what's involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wanted to throw in one criticism that I have gotten already, and make sure that it gets heard, that it still feels like it's centering whiteness too much. So so when you're reading it, keep that in mind, and like make sure you're reading some of the source materials from that I wrote in the very beginning, a list of books that I got, source materials from people, and so like read the source material and just be aware of that dynamic that needs to get fixed in my future work. So
we've all got room to grow, but I will say that I've looked at that reading list, that resource list, and there's some great stuff in there. So even if you for some reason don't like the zine, you will. But even if you didn't, there's an amazing kind of treasure trove of reading material in there to go look up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Again, thank you everybody for joining, and I am so thankful to have Nettles and Mexie grace me with their presence.
Yeah, this was awesome.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. Make sure to go check out Antifa International. You can Antifa Defense Fund on Twitter, or antifainternational.wordpress, or just look in the links in the description. Bye, everyone. Be safe.
Bye.